And welcome everybody, ladies and gentlemen, to the final quarter final of today, as we see Momo from Team Petroleum over on Spirit on Coal Tower 2 against Invictus, as Momo has found Nightlight over by Shaq already and has taken a slap for his troubles, moving over to a God Rock. Trying to bamboozle and move away from the Gold Rock, not going to full Momo, who manages to track Nightlight to the corner. And will be our first hook, as we have a quick look at Momo's perks, opting for Dragon's Grip, Pop, Eruption, and Corrupt, as there goes the first gen, over by 8, I believe, and swinging, but not finding anyone with that swing, as we see Kexo moving over towards 11. Doing a very good job until I jinxed him of keeping his distance from Momo, but does take a hit up to main, as we see the gen over by 1 being popped. As I believe this is CT1, not CT2. And Nightlight does get unhooked and stuns Momo with Shaq and dropping Jungle Gym as well. Unfortunately not going to make it much further than 3 as he goes down and is going to be hooked. Looks like mid-map by Momo, which is a pretty good spot for him considering the gens that are remaining, but obviously Invictus doing a very good job of having a very high and efficient gem progression, as we see a cheeky blast line coming in on Momo up at main, as Invictus use that as their time to pull Nightlight, who does get for the peopled by Dan, but unfortunately tagged there over the pallet by Momo, as again we do have an EU versus NA matchup, with Petroleum, I believe, being predominantly NA and Invictus being an EU team. So there is ping that does come into play there, as Nightlight unfortunately getting tagged through the window, not quite making it over, as we do see a firecracker come in from, I believe that was Pedro. Unfortunately not in the line of sight to save Nightlight, as we have our first kill at 2 gens by Momo, who is now making his way to main, as we do hear that 12 had a lot of progress and does get popped in his face by, I believe, the 2 injured survivors of Dan and Kexo, just looping the main boxes in main, buying as much time as possible for Kexo to make as much distance as he can, as with Spirit and her phase she can very easily catch up and utilize any slugging that does occur, but looks like not getting much success being able to find Kexo, as he does end up screaming there on the Dragon's Grip, I believe, but opting to pick up Dan and hooking mid-map, top mid again, as the Dragon's Grip not getting the value it potentially could have, as Kexo obviously already injured, and we see him there at Shaq, as I believe Dan, that's Delhi coming through, but very nice jukes there from Kexo, able to be as quiet as possible just to stop Momo finding him, but Oh my goodness, where is he? There he is! The moans were helping him in that situation instead of hindering him, but unfortunately going to go down in the corner at 5 and Eruption procking on the mid-gen there. But very well played by Kixo, as Momo did block the window with his phase and not give Kexo much chance, but he did manage to buy enough time as the unhook coming in immediately from one of our Invictus survivors, and it's looking like Kexo had resurgence there, as that was pretty much an insta-heal onto Kexo. But kicking the gen at 11, then moving back to this mid-gen, which I believe is the one that has the most progress on. But because Kexo did actually scream because of Dragon's Grip, the Invictus survivors will know that now, so they may opt to be a bit more cautious and play this a bit slower because of that Dragon's Grip. As we see Pedro using Sprint Burst, I believe. Or it could have been Life to make distance between him and Momo, who is just patrolling these gens, looking to catch a survivor out of position, as Dan does make it to the pallet somehow and does not take a hit. I've seen that hit, I've seen that not hit, and today is Dan's day as he gets away without a single scratch on him, as Momo returns back to the mid-gen to proc that Dragon's Grip again, which I believe didn't get any of the survivors, but they will know that Dragon's Grip is active because Kexo did reveal that earlier. So they do know how to play this, and eventually a nice double vault coming through from Pedro there just to avoid the hit or delay the hit, as I believe he does make that window as well, and it's looking like Momo is just trying to get a tag on anyone, as Pedro does double back and vault the window again, and is doing a very good job of pathing wherever Momo is not, which is essentially a survivor's job. But does end up getting tagged there as he tries to use the Z-wall. He is already making his way to main and does eventually go down by the car tile as Eruption does come in and, wow, essentially stop that mid-gen from popping, as Momo does fake for the pickup to try and catch a survivor off guard, but Dan able to get Pedro up off the ground, but will be taking a hit for his contributions, and we see Momo doing everything he can just to stop this final gen from popping, and it looks like it was Kexo with the blast mine who comes through to 99 the gen, I believe, with the blast mine, and then pop it in Momo's face. That is pure value from a perk. That is a blast mine enthusiast, and we do love to see it. Not one of the most known perks, as wow, that gate gets instantly opened. That probably was Wake Up, as we see Dan and Pedro and all three of our survivors leaving, so we will be back shortly for the reverse fixture with Invictus on Killer, so stick around and we'll be right back. And welcome back to the second trial of the first set. We have Pedro from Invictus over on Spirit on Kill Tower 1 against Petroleum, with Pedro, I believe, needing 6 stages to secure the dub for Invictus in this first set, who has the same build as Petroleum did, so not much variation there. and I believe the same add-ons, as we see Pedro finding Momo over by 8, who has made his way to Shaq, who successfully makes it to Shaq, dropping Shaq, and is looking to prolong this chase over on the bottom side of the map. Pedro very patient there with the phase to be able to listen for Ada, who is one of the quieter survivors, but is not completely quiet, as we get our first hook over on bottom mid. And no gens popped quite yet, as we do see a gen over at 2 with lots of progression, which is going to be popped back down to close to 0%. And we do find a sneaky little ace edge map. He does get tagged, and I believe that's life. Makes his way to a God Rock at 7, but does not quite make it, as Pedro secures a second hook, with Momo still resonating on the hook over at bottom mid. And just as I say that, does get rescued by our mystery hero, but Momo in a bit of trouble here over at 1, trying to make main window with a dead hard coming in, able to make main because of that dead hard, but with spirits phasing, it's just insta catch up time, as Petro does hit Momo over the pallet, and I believe will prevent the first gen from being popped over at 10. Just efficient gameplay using the pop the weasel, but the flashlight save does come in from, I think it's Lovejar with Champion of Light and the beam. Exciting times, as Momo is still, I believe, only has 1 stage, as he didn't go second, as the first gen does pop over at main? Popped above our heads. And we hear an Ada, who does get caught on the pallet, unfortunately, not able to drop it in time, and here comes a sprint burst from Lovejar, who looked like he thought Pedro was just going to go for the pickup, but tried to double back to get the flashlight save, but Pedro seems like he knew what was up with that and isn't going to be fooled again, as we do see Jay lurking for the, I believe, the pallet save, as there's now 3 survivors in one area, with Momo getting hit through the pallet. Unfortunately, that is just ping things, but in the background we do see another gen pop. I believe that was a mid-gen. And Lovejar ending up going down as well, taking a hook stage. But the wink-on is difficult for Petroleum, so it would have to take a spectacular performance to pull this off with spectacular gameplay, which we are seeing, as the third gen does pop by Jay, who manages to drop the pallet as well, still alive, but with 3 survivors. Yes, 3 survivors hooked, 1 of them broken. We do see the ace acid trading for Momo, essentially, with Pedro still looking to get Momo out of this game as quickly as possible, as we see Momo try and use silence and patience as an advantage, not quite working, or fooling Pedro in this situation. As Deadard comes in, unfortunate not to land that there. Obviously with the ping, it's something that you can't react to. I don't think so, because of the level of latency. You don't have time to react. It's something you have to predict. Unfortunate not to work, as Lovejar is also going to go down as well. Playing very altruistic this game, using that flashlight to its full potential, as he did prevent or delay the kill on Momo. But now we have found Acid over at this filler at 7. Wow, I didn't even hear him, but Pedro did. Very well played there to hear the ace over at 9, who is going to be hooked top mid, as Pedro multitasks, carrying and looking to see where people are, giving some nodders to people. As we see some gameplay. I believe this is Blast. Oh, it's not Blast Mine. I thought he was waiting, thinking it was Blast Mine, as we see Jay trying to pop the gem with all his strength, but unfortunately not going to work as well. Pedro hears Lovejar coming in for the unhook. He unfortunately doesn't get it, and is going to go down, as that gen does get erupted as well. So it's looking like a 4k2 from Pedro, which will secure the win for the first set, which will go to Invictus. But it's not over till it's over, but it's nearly over, as we see a wild ace lurking in the shadows, and now it's become a farming game where we will just play like no one's watching, essentially. But yeah, that will secure the first win for Invictus, which obviously is a tough win con for Petroleum, but a valiant effort, I might add, and good play. So I believe the next set will be Clown on Yamoka Estate, which is will be a funny one. So we'll be back shortly after a break to catch the second set. And welcome back for our second set on Family Residence Yamoka Estate. We have Pedro back at it again on the Clown for Invictus against Petroleum, as we see two survivors up at 1 and 2, as I believe Ace here is going to take a hit towards mid-map with a slight change in our perks, minus the pop. He has chosen to go for Pain Res on this occasion, as we do see Acid going down, unfortunately, on 1, as we have a little swirl and reload of our bottles, and using the haste there just to be able to get to the hook even quicker. And going to hook mid-map, choosing a better Pain Res hook. That is a luxury that not many have, being able to decide which Pain Res hook shall I put the survivor on, as it looks like he's got pretty good RNG with these Pain Res hooks. He looks like he's got 2 top and 2 sort of mid to bot, which is the ideal place you want to be hooking survivors, as we do some housekeeping on the gens, just making them regress and using our yellow bottles to move a bit faster, as Clown is limited in his movement speed, but still using it as much as he can just to get around the map as quick as possible. And looking like it's going to be a proxy on the Acid on the hook, as there's just not much gem progress, let's be honest. With the pain res and the hooks coming in, and I take it back. There goes one gen down at, I believe, 5 from Petroleum, and that is our first gen popped. And that is our second gen popped in Shack, as Acid does hit second. And there comes the speed, 10% haste. Although only 10%, it does make a difference, as we see Jay saying hello to the killer. He does use one of his pink bottles on Jay, so does only have one left. And he's going to be looking to go back and find Momo, as he did use all the people on Ace, who does get found behind a tree. Not quite skinny enough to stay hidden behind that tree, as Pedro just sends it and downs Acid to be our first kill at 3 gens. As we see, ooh, that sometimes works. I mean, depending, their ping is higher than if they're playing against people on their own servers, so that could maybe or maybe not have worked. 50-50. Nice try there from Lovejar, just to basically save Acid, who is our first exiter from the trial. As it looks like we have a sneaky suspicion that someone is hiding edge map. I think they were behind that Z wall, or maybe not. It's probably a crow, and I was probably seeing things, but just choosing to kick the gen and go back to this mid map where there is quite a strong 3 gen here, and it is surrounded by pain res hooks, so it's a pretty good setup for Pedro to have, as Dragon's Grip does go off on the gen, but that is all the way on the other side of the map at 11. But we do spot Lovejar over at top mid, who... not top mid, bot mid, sorry, who is making his way to Shack. And it doesn't look like he's going to reach it with the hindrance from the bottles and also the add-ons, which I believe prolong and increase the effect of the bottles, which is something that is very, 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 very strong. As we see the second pain res coming in onto Lovejar over at the little canopy above Shack, which is basically 8 for those clock call out enthusiasts. As we do some quick corner checking over in main, but we are going to find Momo over at 11, who is just going to opt to, I think, point at the corner or become one with the bamboo and go down edge map and be hooked at 11. With this gen getting kicked, but no pop to add cherry on the cake. As in the meantime, I believe Lovejar was saved by Jay and they were able to reset, so Momo going down in the corner on almost the complete opposite side of the map was able to buy enough time for our 2 other survivors from Petroleum to reset. As we see Jay slaying down a pallet gym, who is now going to be in chase with Le Clown, who is looking and does get his first tag onto Jay, who will also be making his way not to Shack, because that's too obvious, but to, oh my goodness, the ping, to fill up, which unfortunately does get hit through. That's an NAEU thing, where the ping is just high enough to be able to hit some of those, especially if you're going off reactions, which isn't always an option on this type of ping, but something that is high risk, high reward, and could pay off. But that was our third of our fourth pain reses. We've still 3 gens remaining, so these perks are being very well utilized by our killer Pedro from Invictus, as we are looking to find and go back to Lovejar, I believe, who has been unhooked. Not Lovejar, sorry. Jay, who was unhooked and is opting to point at the brick wall edge map. And will now be hooked all the way down at 5, which is the complete opposite side map of the gens, so Petroleum still doing a good job in making sure that they are not hooked within the gens that are being progressed on, although there is a gen nearby at 4 that it has quite a lot of high progression, but Pedro not able to find any survivor down there. I think he was faking to kick the gen to try and bait someone to pre-run away and see if they had any scratch marks, but didn't look like it worked. But that's something I'll have to try if I ever decide to hop on killer. So we do see the gen over at 11 pop with 2 gens remaining, as it looks like Jay is going to be leaving the trial from that exact location this time around, as there could be someone over bottom side of the map, but not entirely sure. Oh, hello, as we see Lovejar making his way to the hook, if he possibly can. It looks like he is being, and did get body blocked from not being able to get the prompt to take the unhook, which is something that is kind of not talked about. The fact that Pedro was able to block the unhook, so he wasn't able to unhook even if he wanted to, is honestly part of it's down to the hook RNG and just how close together they are. But anyway, we do see Lovejar going down. Looks like he had Calm Spirit, as no scream came through. Yeah, from Lovejar, and there is our second hook on Lovejar, as we look for Momo, as this is looking like a 4K, never mind, 4K1. Very well played by Petroleum to, despite the survivors being on hook, being able to progress the gens and still essentially rescue the survivors, or prolong their stages enough to be able to not get completely removed from the trial, as we see a cheeky attempt of a window tech from Momo there, but that will be a 4K1 from Invictus, as we will take a short break, that's disgusting, from this trial, and we'll be back with the next one shortly. And welcome back to our second trial of this set, where we have Jay on the Clown for Team Petroleum against Invictus on Survivor, opting for the same perks that Invictus had on Killer, with Corrupt, Eruption, Dragon's Grip, and Pain Res, with Corrupt being on the top side of the map. Looking like he got a good spawn for a Pain Res hook, being at top mid, and another one there at 11. And that's a funny weapon. It looks like Myers' screwdriver, but it's got something wrapped around it. Oh, it's a knife actually. It's just, that was a weird angle. As he does find Dan at main, or who was at 11 but taking a hit onto main, and looks like is going to go down at 1. And we have our first hook. Which, if he wants to, I believe Jay can make it to a Painter's hook, which looks like he's going to at top mid. But we don't have much information on where the rest of the survivors are in terms of location. We do see progress there on a gen, but I imagine they did cross during Dan's chase, as we do see, I believe it was Pedro over on the gen at 4, who does step in the cloud to get hindered, but Jay already knew where he was, as he does have the same add-ons as the previous round. But looks like not committing to anyone yet, just making sure that he does go second, which he doesn't go second because Rocket is able to step in and prevent that from happening, as Jay was just unfortunately too far away to prevent the unhook without a trade onto Rocket. But Jay is looking to track down Dan and stop him in his tracks, as he manages to get a fast vault there while hindered, it looked like. But well played by Dan, but eventually going down back at 1, which it looks like has been a tactical place to take the chase by Dan, which would infer that the gens being worked on are in the complete opposite direction, as we do go down to 4 and see a lot of progress on 4, which does get a kick, and I believe it's inevitable that that gen will eventually get done, as I believe Rocket... No, I believe Kexo came in for the save and the FTP play before the people play on Dan to keep him full, as the first gen does pop over at, I believe, Shaq, as Kexo does go down to ensure Dan survives, and there goes the gen at 4, being the second gen to pop. As we see Dan just absolutely send it down bottom map, as he knows that Pedro is there and can take a hit if needed. As we see Jay commit to Pedro, who I believe was still infected from the Dragon's Grip, which has worked well in Jay's favour, who's looking to get his 3rd down in a row onto Invictus. As we see on the map, Pedro does get picked up by, I believe, Rocket, and they are now all up, as we see Dan able to make it to Shaq and drop Shaq and essentially deny Jay all this pressure of being able to slug and essentially prevent them from doing any gens, as we see a reset coming in from the down survivors. But it's looking like Dan is still gonna struggle and struggle, but will waste and stay alive as long as he can, running around a rock to prevent the down just for even a second longer, as we see our first kill from Jay at 3 gens by Shaq. And very well played from both sides there, as Dan was able to buy enough time for a reset to come in for them to be able to relieve the pressure that Jay was able to put on. But Jay doing a very good job being able to track down Dan and achieve his goal of removing or killing that one survivor to make it a 3v1 with 3 gens remaining. As we see Rocket over on the David at this funky tile, trying to win some 50s, wins a couple, and then unfortunately does take a tag from Jay over to Shaq, which, as we know, has already gone, as we see, 13% haste on the Clown, who is able to down Rocket inside of Shaq, and also near a pain res, but unfortunately, because Dan was on that hook has not reset yet. So no pain res there, unfortunately, for Jay, which would have come in very, very handy due to Kexo and Pedro definitely being on 2 different gens, as there we see the gen at 1 getting popped by Kexo, who takes a slap over the pallet, but was able to pop the gen. As looking to take the chase to main and last as long as he can, but unfortunately goes down over at 1 again. But the 2 remaining survivors from Invictus are able to get the reset in for the trade-off of a pain res hook onto Kexo, as we have 2 gens remaining, and I believe the win con is 4k0 for Invictus, or 4k2 for Petroleum, as Jay tries to spot and see any survivors working on gens down at bottom. He does find Pedro over at 5, who fakes the window but not going to fool Jay, as he does take a hit before he can reach the pallet at Jungle Gym, and unable to create enough distance to dodge the bottles and break line of sight, but is able to make the window. And does use the cracker, not able to blind the killer, obviously, because of the nerf, and being able to look up, and does end up going down at Shaq, and will be picked, and will now have the option to finally use that hook with the pain res, which he wasn't able to use on, I believe, Rocket. And there is the 3rd out of 4 pain reses, with the last pain res being on Rocket, and still at 2 gens, but the split on the gens is remarkable. It is almost a diagonal line of gens through the whole map. Unlike the previous match, there doesn't seem to be a 3 gen. There was a 3 gen, there was another gen in the mid that was prioritized, it looked like, by Invictus to prevent a scenario which happened in the previous round of that 3 gen being held in the middle of the map on Family Residence, as it looks like Jay's gonna confirm this second hook, as there were scratch marks leading towards the hook. I don't think he saw those, or maybe I'm imagining things, but I'm pretty certain I saw scratch marks. I'm imagining things. Okay. So there was in fact no one going, or they were running away. They may have been running away. But we do see someone come in. No, we don't. I'm imagining things. No, I'm not imagining things. We do see Kexo. It was Kexo coming in for the unhook, as we see Pedro using that degree in body blocking university to take a hit for Kexo, but will now be in his own spot of trouble. Oh, hello. Over at the filler, but Kexo able to just narrowly avoid the lunge there from Jay, but then does end up taking a hit over to main while Jay proceeds with his chase on Pedro, who has this pallet up at 11, as we do hear the sound of gens popping over on the other side of the map as Pedro is able to avoid a swing once from Jay, but Jay does catch him on the second lunge to provide our second kill for Team Petroleum at 1 gen remaining. So this is getting very, very close. Now I believe they still just need to pop that last gen to secure the 2-0 of this quarterfinal match, but the work is not over yet, as there is only 2 survivors remaining, one of which is injured, and we still have a pain res in play, plus the Dragon's Grip, which could prove to be very, very valuable, as we see Pedro pre-drop and opt to use the flashlight to try and prevent the killer from tracking him, but Jay able to track the David and Rocket without needing to know exactly where he is. As we see, I don't think we see him not commit and go back up to see and prevent these 2 gens up here being progressed by Kexo, which is, I imagine, yep, we see quite a lot of progress on the gen at 12, at main, sorry, but no Kexo. As I believe he doesn't have the luxury of wasting time looking for Kexo, as the gen split is somewhat large to where he can't afford to spend too much time at one side of the map, as that could cause a gen on the other side to pop. However, it is still a pretty tricky situation, as we do hear a scream come from David as he gets back on that gen at bottom mid, but Kexo able to stop the regression on the gen at main and still not be found, which, if they keep this up, he will run out of kicks eventually and a gen will get popped. But let's see if Rocket is able to be as stealthy as Kexo was. And it looks like they're managing to do a pretty good job at the moment, Invictus, by progressing the gens and not getting found, but how long will that last, and how long will it be till Jay may decide just to gamble, really, and spend a lot of time looking for one survivor like he is now. I wonder if... Oh! He was in a locker. I was going to say, I wonder if he had Iron Will, but I think if you're in a locker, you are a lot quieter. But we do get the aura of Rocket, who did look like he was making his way to the canopy over at mid. So he does have a location on Rocket, who's going to make his way towards 4. He does greet the pallet and makes it to another pallet, as we see Jay having to reload as he does reach... He did reach Bloodlust 1 for a millisecond. As we see the loopings of a 1v1 player. Oh, he tries to predict the non-double back, but unfortunately does not work out, and it looks like this is a 4k1 for Team Petroleum, which I believe is a tie, as we see this questionable Mori again. Ooh. But yes, we'll be back shortly, I think, with the next set, I believe. And welcome back to our, I'm hoping, third and final set with Blaito on Suffo Pit, I believe. Or is it Suffo Pit 2? It's definitely one of them. As we do find Kick so quickly at main. He does take a tag through the pallet and manages to avoid the hit, even on the ping, the cross ping. Hello. And wins a 50 on the cross ping, and wins a pallet on the cross ping, and is able to survive a very impressive amount against a Blight, who is running Enduring, Eruption, Pop, and Corrupt. As we do see the double Crow add-ons, as I did think it is Suffo Pit 2. As we find Rocket over at Shack. Who drops Shack like it is nothing but a peanut. As we see Kexo unhooked and immediately healed, looking like he had resurgence there. As we see Momo heading back over to the hook, which was over at 11. But going back on Rocket now, who was pressuring the mid-gen, as we see a gen over at 10, I believe, Pop. But Rocket greeting the pallet, unfortunately not paying off, as Momo deciding to read it. Obviously, having Enduring, he will not get punished as much for going through pallets, and obviously, I've said obviously a lot, they do not know he has Enduring, but now they do. As we see him instantly break and run through the pallets. As Rocket with some very nice movement, prolong the path to prolong the down, as we see him point in the corner, the good old point in the corner tech, to die as far away as possible, or that's the idea from the gens with progress on. As that's our second hook of the game after one gem being popped. And speaking of pops, never mind, we see an absolutely zooming Blight zoom over the hill to take a hit onto Dan, but as I was saying, speaking of pops, we do see Pop, and there goes Pop. Looking like Rocket is maybe getting reset, maybe not, as he does find Dan, and with some efficient rushes downs Dan over at main, as a gen somewhere in the distance does pop, leaving 3 remaining in this trial, as the mid-gen is still regressing, but Rocket managing to get a reset in. And now it looks like the gens are predominantly over by main. As we see the flying Blight strike again, but Pedro doing well to avoid the swing from Momo, who is looking to prevent anyone rotating to the pull on Dan behind main. But that looks like Delhi. And it's probably Delhi. As we see Rocket giving a nice little crouch to body block, using that degree to prevent Dan from getting downed again, and also using that flashlight to try and bamboozle Momo and stop him tracking him. As there goes a filler as Momo decides to go back to this gem, which is extremely close to popping and extremely close to running out of kicks because of that eruption, which I believe counts as 2. As we see Kexo managing to drop the pallet in time to deny the hit from Momo. Momo now just rushing and rushing and rushing as Pedro unfortunately does get hit through the pallet. Another cross ping thing coming in to play there, as a team from NA, team from EU means higher pings, means higher chance of those kind of hits coming in. But now seeing Rocket over at the jungle gym, who does take a tag towards the 4 lane, drops the pallet, and unfortunately does go down by the mid of the map. And will be hooked by logs. And Momo just speeding, zooming and zooming and zooming, trying to spot any scratch marks. But wow, coming in for an immediate pull onto Rocket and able to get a hit onto Kexo, looking like he's gonna be chasing Kexo. That looked like overcome from Kexo. Just because of the amount of distance he got, but a quick down from Momo again onto Kexo, but not able to use his pop that time around. But this gen over here probably, oh, it is out of kicks, looking like, so not able to kick that gen anymore, but able to pop this one over by main, as we see Kexo get immediately unhooked, and there's that resurgence, meaning he's able to get back to full health, but not that it lasts long, as Momo does find him and immediately puts him back into the injured state. But we do see the 3rd gen pop in the background, as we see Momo try to down, I believe, Rocket, who is also, and Dan, who is also at Shack, taking a hit for Rocket, with now all 4 survivors injured. And Rocket going down behind Shack, with Eruption popping the gen by main. As we see our first kill onto Rocket at 1 gen remaining, as this gen does manage to get popped, even with Eruption going off. As we see Dan over here on these filler pallets, which are a bit of a pain rushing around if you are light, but if you're Momo it's probably irrelevant, as he does use Enduring to just basically walk through the pallet, break it, and then use the rushes to down Dan, who I believe, I've lost track of the hooks, but must be close to, is on his 2nd hook. I believe he's almost 12 hooked. Or is on track to 12 hook everyone, one after the other, as we just see him rush and rush and rush and rush between these 3 gen, which is here. As Dan does get pulled, I believe, by Pedro, but Kexo over in Shack, taking a hit and opting to go back to main to... Oh, a nice dodge there from Dan to be able to avoid a blight hit and live a tiny bit longer, because I believe we saw Pedro up on the hill there, and Kexo trying to run and last as long as possible as he just misses the hit from Momo, but eventually going to go down, as there goes the eruption, and I believe there goes Kexo from this trial, with 2 survivors left at 1 gen. It's looking like this could be a 4k1 for Petroleum, with not much gen progress on each gen, plus the mid-gen out of kicks, but very, very much not progressed, as we do see Pedro in the corner of the map playing Ring Around the Rosie with the tree, unfortunately going down. Edge map, which was and is his first hook. So there is a lot of time for either a gen to be popped or Pedro to be pulled, as Dan appeared to be nearby the location of Pedro's hook and opted to pull while he had the chance, and it looks like both of them are... There's a lot of sound notifications as Momo is able to track down Pedro and find him, and it looks like this is going to be a 4k1 as Dan does get hit from questionably far away, just reminding us that there is cross ping again on this in this match. But there we have it, a 4k1 for Petroleum on Blight, and next up we will have Invictus on Killer against Petroleum on Survivor for our 3rd and final set. So after a quick break, we will return with our final match. And welcome back to the final trial with Pedro from Invictus on the Blight on Suffocation Pit 2 against Petroleum, with Pedro needing a 4k2 to secure the W and move Invictus into the semi-finals of this tournament. We do find Acid over by main, getting a nice tag on to Acid, as we see Pedro has opted for Rancor instead of Enduring, as Momo had, and Petroleum from Killer, as we see Acid doing a very good job making it to main to be able to utilize the strength of main, but unfortunately not able to make it over the pallet, as Pedro and Invictus have their first hook, with some little nodders for a little victory of a little hook onto Acid, as Pedro will be looking to expend his pop over onto the gem by Shaq. As there goes Shaq from Momo. Pedro just making sure that I think no one's crossing to get Acid off the hook, as there goes another pallet and resource. As Pedro does kick a further gen just to prop Eruption when that comes, and if that comes into play, but heading back to hook, still no sign of any survivor moving in for the unhook, although as Arena is spotted, Lovejar having to trade for Acid to prevent the second stage onto Acid, who does fortunately have life, but is unable to escape the grasp of the Blight, who... Oh, but Decisive Strike does come in from Acid having life, and Decisive Strike... If you wanted to chase someone... If you wanted someone to be chased and you were Petroleum, you would want it to be Acid. He does! Unfortunately, due to the cross-spring, or maybe not the cross-spring, get hit through the window, but there goes 2 gens, as Eruption, I believe, did proc or pop off during that, but nonetheless 2 gens do get popped for the trade of Acid's second hook, as Pedro choosing to pop the gen over at mid-map. And all very nice. Momo able to get the stun onto Pedro and prevent that first hit, which looks like it's coming now, as Momo opting for what seems like a bold move, hopping into the locker just to entice Pedro to pull, while Lovejar was going for the unhook on Ace, but Ace unfortunately not able to escape the tunnel from Pedro, who has utilised his Decisive Strike already, and there is our first kill by Invictus at 3 gens remaining. As we do see the 3rd gen pop, and all locations of survivors revealed to the killer, as we see Kenshi taking a chase, and also Momo, both at the jungle gym, able to avoid the hit from the Blight and make it to the pallet. But we see some nice mind games there from Pedro to make the distance on to Momo, and Momo unfortunately getting tagged by that swing through the window and not able to clear the window without receiving a lunge attack from the Blight, who picks Momo and will be looking to hook somewhere mid-map or somewhat near these remaining gens that Petroleum have to finish. As we see Pop being used to its full potential, able to regress the gens as much as possible. Lovejar unfortunately not winning a 50, being able to vault away from the killer, but winning a 50 there, able to make it round the pallet and vaulting back. But unfortunately getting stuck on the tree. The tree, which prevented him from making it around the corner, and Pedro able to get the down and the, I believe, first hook for Lovejar, which he will opt to take somewhere in the vicinity of the remaining gens. As we do see, I believe, Kenshi over by the pallet gym. He uses the flashlight to try and bamboozle the killers, but at this level I don't think it's doing much apart from providing commentary for me. As we see a zooming blind zooming, able to spot scratch marks in the survivor over at this gen behind main at 3. And it's Kenshi. Who does, unfortunately, take a hit. And is gonna try and make it towards Shaq, but unable to. And we hear the eruption go, and those gens regress back down towards 0, with Kenshi being hooked again in the gens, unfortunately not able to make it away from the gens being progressed, but Momo able to take a hit and Kenshi able to wiggle. As we see Lovejar over at main, unfortunately taken down by Pedro. And with 1 gem remaining, this is looking like it could be a win for Petroleum. Or potentially a tie. As we see, I believe, a reset coming in from the 2 remaining survivors. Who would, you would think, have reset somewhere over the other side of the map just to prevent them being found mid-reset, which is what Pedro has assumed in this scenario, looking to prevent any survivors crossing towards the hook to get the unhook, which is also in the area of the last remaining generators. As it looks like this is it for Lovejar, as we do some side quests. Or I should say 1 side quest, with Lovejar hanging on for dear life, unfortunately going to be exiting the trial, joining Acid, dying at, or being killed at 1 gen remaining, as we do spot Momo over by the gen at behind main, as there comes the blast mine, which always makes me giggle, as it's never surprising. It's always surprising, is what I should have said. But Momo ending up getting tagged and proceeding to almost lose track of the Blight. Turning left and right. And going down, but instantly being picked up. That was almost like we're gonna live forever in the speed that he was able to recover. As those crates or whatever they are a pain to rush around as a Blight, especially with the new generation Blight, as we see some 50s and 50s and 50s from Kenshi. but Pedro able to take and get the hit, but rushing back to the side of the map where all the generators are, as that is where he needs to be. And he does find Momo, who was trying and trying and trying to get as much progress on the gens as possible. But unfortunately not able to, but able to win 50 and fast vault away. But unfortunately with the rushes not able to make it as far as you could if this was not a killer that could zoom around the map. But this gen awfully close. And yes, that happened. Petroleum unfortunately not able to pop the last gen of the trial. Which means, I believe, it's time for Clown. Again. Because this is first to 2 wins. And this was a draw. So we will be returning once again for the Clown on Family Residence, which could prove to be, and will prove to be, the deciding match between Petroleum and Invictus as we wait for our survivors to slowly exit the trial, and that is making me motion sick. But it's maybe it's light training, but we will never know. As we see Momo eventually exiting the trial and Kenshi, so we will be back in a jiffy with the final and deciding set. See you shortly. And welcome back to the Clown. As I'm sure you remember from earlier, our second set, which we are replaying to find the winner of this quarterfinal. As we see Pedro back on the Clown for Team Invictus against Petroleum over on the Family Residence. Opting for the same build, same perks, as we do see some survivors around main. And it looks like we have found Jay. He double vaults, unfortunately, into the killer. And is in trouble. And will be going down over here at this Gen 1, which it seems like someone could be lurking around, as there were multiple scratch marks over here, but Pedro able to pick. Didn't hear any footsteps moving in for the pallet save, so it looks like it was a false alarm. As we do get our Pain Riz hook over on 2. And here comes the speed. 10% haste. As it was only 10%, I remember Petroleum Killer having 13%. Whether that's an add-on or maybe a bug, I'm not sure. But we just see the playstyle of opting for some proxy of the hook to try and secure this second stage. As we are still at 5 gens, and it looks like decent RNG on the Painter's side of hooks, as he does have one in mid as well, which is very, very good to hook as it does seem that this map can be split in two, but judging from the gens, it looks like, as we do see Jay there hitting second on the hook, and Pedro now opting to leave as we see a gen pop down at 5. And we see Lovejar. I'm not sure what he was doing. Maybe he was trying to wrap around the back of Pedro to bamboozle him, but ended up running into him. Maybe that was the clown's big belly, who knows, but not able to successfully do that play. Is moving over to Jay, who did get for the people to get back to full health, but will be taking a hit towards Shaq as Pedro has to reload and drop Shaq by throwing the bottle just to slow down Jay and stop him getting as much distance as he could over to the tile, but dropping in the locker just to buy that extra time as, wow, as two more gens do pop. But there we have our first kill on Jay at 2 gens. With looking like still a 3 gen here over on top side, but a lot of progress on this gen at 2 as Pedro seems to try to bait out anyone lurking near the gen who may pre-run away, but not finding anyone unfortunately. But we are searching for someone who potentially... We're not searching for someone, we're searching for the reset, which unfortunately cannot be found in time to prevent it. And it looks like they were able to reset, which may or may not have been away from the gens or near the gens. Which it looks like they may have just reset near the gens, which is somewhat risky, but it also has its perks of being able to hop back on the gens. It looks like Lovejar is eventually taking a hit, but going through main. And does have Calm Spirit as not making any sound whatsoever when being hit by the bottles. And there goes the second fresh hook, I believe, of the game, and it's looking like another pain res. So 2 out of the 4 pain reses are hooked. 2 out of the 4 pain reses are left for our killer here, which has become a bit of a game of which side's going to make the first move, as there is still pretty strong Frisian at main, which they're looking to try and avoid if possible, I think, Team Petroleum, as Acid is able to unhook Lovejar without trading, but Lovejar is in a very, very difficult spot, as does unfortunately go down. And is picked with the eruption going off on main gen, not main gen, sorry, and the gen further down mid, as Lovejar is put back on the same hook down at mid, and looks like Pedro will go back to his previous patrol route of finding... No, they do manage to get the unhook immediately, and they do have progress on that gen down there, but if they do pop that gen, it is going to leave a strong 3-gen top map. But Momo able to use the For the People to fully heal Lovejar, as we do hear the ace get back on the gen down at 4. And finding Lovejar, or maybe not Lovejar, just Momo, who opts to trade a hook stage and also a pain res for the price of Lovejar remaining in the trial. As we see the clown speed zooming around, but he does spot Lovejar on the other side of main, but not committing, as aware that Acid could potentially come in for the pull on Momo. And knowing exactly where he is, will opt to try and prevent that from happening. As we do see was it Lovejar? Or... Wow, who got the unhook? It was Lovejar. As we see the chem trap on that pallet. And Lovejar did in fact get the unhook, and is now just trying to buy as much time as possible for, I believe that gen Acid was on will get popped, leaving this 3-gen at main, but Lovejar taking a hit towards main, and Pedro leaving to go back down and prevent this final... I think that's his final kick, or second last kick on that gen. Not much left to regress that gen, which will inevitably be popped. And also a lot of progress on the gen inside main, as Pedro is just looking for the survivors who would have been told that he was approaching, maybe trying to cut them off or prevent them from getting to any loops that are still valid, such as... Oh my goodness. Okay, I had to make sure that was not a Giga Chad play, but with no decisive in play, I believe that was a misinput of... We've all been there, vaulting into the locker instead of over the pallet, which happens to the best of us. Or maybe it was a opt to force the pull on Lovejar. We see Momo very nicely avoiding the lunge there by opting to not vault the pallet, but ending up going down after Woods, and we see Acid here with a little chase, as it looks like this is going to be a 4k1 for Team Invictus. Unless Acid absolutely cooks up, which unfortunately he isn't given the chance to do so by Pedro, so it is looking to be a 4k2 win condition for Team Petroleum on Clown, which we will see coming up next to take this game, or this match, to a final tiebreaker, which would really put the icing on the cake for these matches that we've had today, which have been tiebreaker after tiebreaker after tiebreaker. So we will eventually have a winner, and that winner will be moving through to the semi-finals of this tournament, as we wait for our survivors to hopefully swiftly exit the trial and we will be back with the final set. Not set. We'll be back with the final trial of this set to decide the winner of the clown tiebreaker. Will it be Invictus? Will it be Petroleum? We do not know. It could actually go either way. Honestly, it could. Who knows? But we will eventually know in about half an hour. So we will be back after a short little break, and yes, enjoy these adverts. And welcome back to a familiar face of Jay on the clown on Family Residence for Team Petroleum, going up against Team Invictus, needing a 4K2, I believe, to secure the dub and take us into a final set, which will be the Blight, as he does find Dan over 11, who takes a little hit towards mid-map, as we see Jay tracking him back around towards the tile, and some and some nodders and some laughters from the clown and from Jay as he looks to get his first hook, which will not be a painless, but a hook nonetheless. And having the same build, I believe, as Pedro from Team Invictus on the killer, as we see Dan get pulled off hook by our mystery hero survivor, who it looks like wants Kexo. He will be trying to prolong Dan's injury and not get injured, hopefully, but unfortunately not able to take a hit, as we do see Dan go down. That gen is awfully close to being popped, as we see Rocket take a hit to finish the gen, to deny that pain was coming in. But we do still have 4 more gens remaining from Team Invictus. As we see, this weapon is really confusing me, because it looks, from the perspective here, it looks just like a stick, a metal stick, but when he swings it, you can clearly see it's a knife, but it's a strange one. But we do see Dan get unhooked by a member of Team Invictus, who will be at Shack, just looking to try and survive as long as possible, which is usually not very long in these clown chases, just because of the hindrance that these bottles can get, plus the lack of resources near Shack, as it seems to be quite an isolated place to be, as we see him jump into basement as a last-ditch effort to try and extend the chase for as long as humanly possible. But unfortunately, there goes Dan at 2 gens, so it did buy enough time for another gen to get popped over by 11. Was that 11? I believe. Or it was 9. But we do see Pedro, and we do chase Pedro towards 1, who will make the window. As we see, I believe he does have some sort of add-on that makes him 13%. As we do see Pedro, unfortunately, going down, and Jay getting another pain res stack here over at 2. With 2 gens remaining. As the split of the gens across the map is, as you would say, perfect. With 2 gens looking like they are bottom of the map and 2 gens top, so they have completely split the map in half, making it a very, very difficult scenario for Jay to be in, because it doesn't sound like much progress is being done on the 2 top gens, so they could just be popping the 2 bottom gens, which would, I believe, secure the dub and the win overall for Team Invictus. But it looks like they are, as that gen has lots of progress on it, and he's not able to take the risk to check the gen at bot, but it looks like Rocket was over on top side and able to unhook Pedro, who does make window and is able to escape. And able to make window again. Doing very well to last this long on pretty much a window and hopes and dreams of staying alive, as he continues to loop the short, tiny wall behind the jungle gym, but will eventually go down, but not before the second last gen does pop over at 4. So now there is that gen all the way over there, which I believe has 0 progress on it, as Rocket was top side but could have made his way down to bot, which I believe Jay is making the trip all the way down to bottom to see how much progress there is on this gen. It does find Rocket over at 5, who is just trying to survive, really. That's the game. They are survivors. They survive. Rocket, unfortunately, found in the locker, partly, I believe, to avoid the slug and hook to then find Kexo, but Rocket being pain resed, meaning that whatever gen did have the highest progression is now considerably less, so this is looking like an extremely close match, which these last couple matches have truly been, as he does find Kexo behind the tree. Unfortunately, the tree not keeping him camouflage, although he is in a very camouflage pro outfit. But able to... Oh my goodness, he hit that. Was that with life as well? That is crazy. And Yes, we don't get to see his Mori. That is a victory for the spectators. But I believe it's 4K1, so that's a tie, so I think we're going back to Blight. If I could get a confirmation from anyone. That's a yes. We are going to the final of the final, which will be Blight back on Sopho 2, which will be coming up shortly and will be the defining set of this match, which has become a 5-part series of sets from Team Petroleum and Invictus, proving each team can take blows back and forth. Who will win it? Who will go on to the semi-finals and join the rest of the teams that have progressed through from the quarterfinals? We will find out in a jiffy. We will be back very, very shortly after a few messages. And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We are here for the 5th and the final, unless it's a tie and then we go to 1v1 hag, which honestly I'm down for. Let's just go there now. But we see Momo finding Pedro over at a pallet gym, who does actually manage to get the blind on Momo with the firecracker coming in clutch to prevent the first hit and completely lose track of Pedro. But Momo being so nonchalant and stoic to avoid or ignore the shenanigans and patrol main and try to find someone else, which he has successfully done in Kexo, who, because of the ping, you can't play. No pallet is safe, Shack's not even safe. You have to essentially predict your opponent's movements, and pallet is already gone. But he doesn't need a pallet Kexo, he only needs a wall and belief, as he does win another 50. And Kexo has decided to just completely send it, but Momo leaving Kexo and finding Dan over in mid, who will take a hit, and the ooh, unfortunately Momo did get stuck on the edge of the wall there, which didn't allow him to rush round the corner and get the attempt on Dan, who seems to be almost locker juking from the Blight, but not quite. That rhymed. As we see the second gen, there has already been 2 gens popped. And we do see Momo having not gone for enduring. It looks like, is that Strider? The breathing perk? As he does get a tag on Pedro, who has to drop Villa and does go down in mid-map with Oh, it's Infectious Fright, I think. Which gave Momo the information that there was someone working on the gen over by 3. As Kexo does take a hit on the Nancy, but Pedro being able to be picked back up by potentially a Rocket. But Pedro unable to juke and wiggle away from Momo, who will look to pick him up. No one in there for the pallet stun, and will take this hook mid-map. As we do see a reset, I believe, coming in from Dan and Kexo, which looks like it's in place in the middle of Shack. As you see, unfortunate there, Kexo with the locker juke not quite working out, but we see Momo, it's tunnel time. We go back to the freshly unhooked survivor to try and swiftly remove them from this trial. Which, there was a plan. Pedro with the decisive strike, which I believe... Oh, and a nice locker juke, and he... What? What is going on? Where did he even go? I'm pretty certain he was inside the blight then. I haven't... Or he was just spinning like a ballerina gracefully, but Momo able to get the down, and second hook onto Pedro as the second gen does pop. I mean, the third gen does pop over, I believe, at 4 line main. And just from that extra 30 seconds, there should be a lot of progress around these gens, as we do see Kexo there able to get reset. Back up to full HP. Just able to zoom, and stop these gens from progressing. Plus applying the eruption, plus giving a love tap to Pedro on the hook, as he does see Rocket there, who is going to be body blocked and prevented from unhooking, as we see the power of the body. As the Rocket unable to get the unhook onto Pedro, who was stuck on the hook. As you see the sprint burst coming in from Dan, still unable to avoid the hit though from Momo, but able to make it through main. But against Blight, it is nothing is safe against Blight essentially, but Dan's able to play that very well and prevent the hit. I believe that is maybe the second last kick on that gen, but meanwhile Kexo has been able to pick up Rocket, and unfortunately Rocket is not able to make the pallet with no one coming in for the potential pallet save, as we see Rocket hooked mid-map once again with one gen remaining, which I believe could prove that as we do see Kexo get reset, which is very efficient from our Invictus survivors, which I believe Momo is trying to find and did find a reset. Oh, he had a medkit, so he would have used the medkit, not a reset. As we see Dan juking and juking, but unfortunately not able to juke the last rush from Momo, who definitely has favoritism towards hooks, and it's definitely this hook. As I think him and that hook are day ones. And our best friends. Unfortunately, he got stuck in the tile of that debris, let's say, of the edge map. But Dan able to get pulled by Rocket or Kexo. But with limited resources on the map, oh, he does opt to leave chase to try and stop this last gen getting popped. He hasn't been over to top mid or 10 side for a while. And that could have a lot of progress on those gens, as we see a dead hard from Rocket, which, as we know, cross-ping things is unfortunate. It's very much a game of prediction instead of reaction. And we see Dan, it looks like, trying to buy time to prevent the hook, but I believe Kexo is on, and there we go. One of these gens to to secure the 5th and final gen to power the exit gates. As Dan appeared to have Unbreakable. Which was insanely well read by Momo. Understanding that he did have Unbreakable. You see Kexo. Unfortunately not able to juke, and there we have it at a 4K0 for Team Invictus, which I believe is one gen better than our previous run through of this fixture. As we see no Mori, which I believe is just because Dan will be, Kexo will be on hook for a while, so hooking is the quicker option, and we will return shortly with Invictus as killer to see if they can win this final set of the quarterfinal. So stick around. And we are back for our final trial in this 4v1 tournament for the Arkade, with Pedro from Invictus on Blight on Suffo Pit 2 against Petroleum. As we are proceeding to destroy the map's resources and find acid on Godrock, just in front of Shack. who opts to leave, but does get tagged. Cross ping on the locker just in front of the, I don't even know what that tile is called, the window vault. And will be hooked on Momo's favourite hook in mid-map. That's the Momo hook. But a blast mine coming through from a naughty survivor who appears to be stealthing and lurking in the shadows. Unable to be avoided, but you did hear a crow fly up, which may have been set off by Kenshi as he does get tagged through the window. As back and forth between Survivor and Hook, as a love tap comes in from Pedro on the Hook, just preventing the second stage, and it looks like we are going to be seeing some body blocking from the killer, but unable to prevent the unhook, as Acid was unhooked before hitting second through Lovejar trading. As we see Acid win a 50, but then rush and get downed, unfortunately, by Pedro, who will be getting decisively striked by Acid. So that is, I think that's the same build he had last time. As they were able to switch around builds if they would like between survivors, but it seems that Acid is stuck with trusty old decisive strike, which has proved very useful for him, as he seems to have a way with finding killers, as Pedro finds him with a nice flick around that little tile through main, as the second hook state is on to Acid, as Momo greeds for the gen at main, and we are down to 2 gens already, but not without 2 survivors on Hook. And judging from that and the Rancor, Pedro does have information on where at least one other survivor is. We do see the unhook coming in from Lovejar onto Momo, who looks like will be taking a 2-for-1 deal, or maybe it's looking like a 2-for-1 deal. As we see Pedro hitting Acid with the edge of his weapon and taking Acid out of this trial at 2 gens, with 3 survivors remaining, as we do spot, I believe, Kenshi over by 2. Who does end up taking a tag at this window and making his way just to try and buy as much time as possible, as you see some crazy mind games from Pedro, the old "I'll just stand still and you'll find your way to me" tech. And hooking just where he was down, I believe, to speed up the process and try and buy, always spend as little time as possible carrying the survivor in order to get that pop off on that gen, and search around for any survivors that may or may not be lurking over on the west side of this map. It seems like there aren't any, or they're very good at hiding, which remains to be known, as we do continue to search edge map any people stealthing for the unhook, which doesn't seem to be happening, so it could be the fact that they are cranking for those gens, which they are, as we do see a survivor over edge map. Who narrowly avoids the hit, as Kenshi does go second. As another love tap is received from Kenshi. And Pedro does manage to find Lovejar, who was moving in for the save, but it looks like he is going to manage to get the unhook. But not without trading a down for it, as Kenshi is now in trouble over in a bit of a dead zone, trying to dupe a blight on a tiny rock who has very, 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 very quick. He has a lot of speed, essentially. As it looks like we are going to be slugging for the final down, as we do find Momo, and it looks like this is going to be a dub for Invictus, who will be moving to the semi-finals. And that hit is absolutely disgraceful and something that only happens on cross ping, as we lose our survivors. But that has concluded this round of finals, and thank you for watching. I am Lucky. I have been your caster, and enjoy the rest of your evening, guys and girls.